welcome to your new moon reading for August. So this is going to be for the new moon in your sign, so Leo, and it's going to be for that new moon that happens on the 19th of August. So interesting full moon, new moon, in a lot of ways. First of all, it breaks down to a 4, so we are talking about stability and abundance. Secondly, we've got Venus making conjunction to Sirius, which is lovely energy. So it's almost a continuation of the Lionsgate portal energy, which is now closed. That closed on the 12th of August. But unlike the last two lunar phases we've had, this one should be quite auspicious. And I think things will kind of move a lot swifter than they have for a while, but in a positive way. So anyway, let's get into reading and see what comes out. I have got an extra piece of copper here on the cards because we want to attract abundance in, as well as the clear quartz shroud. So let's see what messages want to come out for Leos, and that's Sun, Moon or Rising. But as always, I do recommend watching the video for your rising sign, because that will make sure that all the house placements are in the correct position. Also, thank you to those people who've ordered my geomancy ebook. Many thanks, and thank you too for the good karma donations. It's always greatly appreciated. So I am still, I've redesigned my cards, as I was saying in my last reading. I've redesigned these cards so that they're easier to read for for the video. And also I noticed last time that your video froze halfway through. So sorry about that. I had quite a lot of problems with my camera. I don't know whether it was the heat, but hopefully we will have better luck this time. Those new cards are at the printers, and I'm hoping that for my next reading, the full moon, I will have those ready to use. Okay. Let's see what wants to come out. Okay, so it's interesting because this Tristia, I think, came up in your last reading as one of your final outcome cards. So it seems as though on some level you're feeling, possibly as we go into this new moon, you're feeling a little bit depressed. And I'm not entirely surprised, because I think you've had quite a lot on your plate these last few months. And let's face it, we're kind of moving through quite difficult times at the moment, quite challenging times, particularly economically. But I also feel as though this is partly to do with some of the things that you were processing over the last moon cycle. It certainly wasn't an easy full moon, that last Aquarius full moon. And it's interesting that that this particular geomantic figure, Tristia, is Saturn in Aquarius. So this is the old ruler of Aquarius, actually, before Uranus was discovered. So Tristia essentially means sadness, and I think here the waters of Aquarius are meant to sort of represent tears that sort of fill a jar. So this is about difficult emotions, and that's the energy that you kind of come into as we enter that kind of new moon phase. So I kind of feel as though this is energy that's probably phasing out. But anyway, let's find out more by pulling some more cards. Okay, so when it comes to home and family, it looks as though this challenging energy here. It's kind of like Rubeus is another water sign. Actually, it's Mars in Scorpio. So again, this is the traditional ruler of Scorpio before Pluto was discovered. So Rubeus can be, I kind of feel as though this is a little bit of that energy that we've got from the Mars Pluto square, which will still be around when we have this particular new moon. It happens on around about the 12th or the 13th of August, and then because Mars and Pluto don't move that quickly, the energy will they'll still be in orb, these two planets. They'll be separating as this new moon happens. So there'll be this kind of residue left over from that energy. So this is kind of stressful energy, or it can be about, you know, it can be about feeling paranoid or kind of unsafe, or it can also be about kind of conflict in the home, you know, a bit of drama with family members, for example. Roubaix is generally speaking passion, because it means fire. So it tends to be fairly kind of like OCD energy. So maybe you've been on a cleaning spree, or this will kind of set you off on a cleaning spree. It can also bring up stuff, simmering resentment that's been kind of bubbling below the surface, say with a family member, for example. So it can sometimes be about not necessarily open conflict. It's more that kind of passive aggressive, like making digs at each other kind of energy. It can also be sometimes about manipulation. So that's just something to be aware of, you know, when it comes to home and family. But then with your 7th house, so this is significant partnerships and relationships, one-to-one. So Populus. Now Populus here is the moon in Cancer, and generally speaking it's about the collective. So it's about kind of not necessarily crowds. It can be, but it can also be about groupthink, or it can be about kind of clan values or mentality. So it could be that you know, there's a sort of one personal relationship, a significant relationship that somehow needs to be integrated into a group. So say for example you have recently moved into a romantic commitment. This card might come up if you are if your partner, for example, is trying to fit into your family, or vice versa. It can also be about potentially, you know, if you're looking to date, it could be about you know, online dating or something of that ilk, where you're kind of using platforms to, you know, kind of public platforms in order to try and meet new people. It can also be about potentially meeting somebody in a kind of a social setting. Of course that's kind of tricky right now, but you know, some places you know, socializing is happening, albeit on a kind of in a controlled way. But there's something here about either community or family and significant relationships that needs to be kind of brought together. And then for your career section, we've got Puer. Now it's interesting. For this axis we've got Mars in both of its iterations. So this is Mars in Aries, so this is fire energy, which is more in tune with your energy. So Puer is about new beginnings, as well as action happening in your career sector, which is great, because I think last time you had Corsair there, which was all about kind of restrictions and blocks and obstacles, things that weren't really working out. So it seems as though this new moon is going to bring in some fresh energy, an injection of momentum, and you can kind of get things going again, you know, when it comes to your career. But anyway, I'm just going to pause quickly while I do your conversions, and then we can continue with the reading in a bit. Hi Leo, welcome back. So I've done your conversions, and we can now dive deeper into your reading. So first off, let's have a look at where the moon is going to be. Now in this case, the sun and the moon are going to be on the same side of the earth, so they're going to both be in the sign of Leo, and on top of that they're going to be making a conjunction to Mercury. So Mercury is now also in the sign of Leo, and I think that's going to give you I think that is what that Albus energy was that we saw in your last reading, that was so prevalent kind of across your ascendant descendant axis, that mercurial energy. I think you're really going to sort of start to feel it now. It's going to kind of manifest. You're going to understand what that was all about. So these three planets together essentially are helping you to express yourself, helping you to get clear about what it is that you want, where you're going, and sort of clear up any confusion that you may have had over the last couple of weeks. So Tristia then, as I said, this is Saturn in Aquarius energy, and it does tend to be about kind of sadness, regret, just a feeling of being a little bit down. And if we look at your second house, we see that Tristia is repeated here. So I kind of feel as though coming into this particular new moon phase, so during the waning moon, the dark moon, I think that this is the residue of energy around feeling a little bit down about particularly money, and that's kind of understandable if we think that last time you appeared to have some kind of restriction or obstruction in your 10th house, so in terms of career and forward movement when it comes to your goals and your plans. This can also be about self-worth, so if there have been some issues to do with, for example, family or friends, because you do have cars there that's now moved from your 10th into your 11th and your 12th houses. It could also be that you'd kind of feel a little bit sort of down on yourself, or there's an issue here about not feeling enough. But I kind of think it's going to dissipate, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The first reason is that Venus is now in Cancer here in your 12th house, and Venus is going to be making a conjunction to Sirius. So this is the star that was so prominent during the Lionsgate portal, number 1, and it was also the star that was so important at the equinox, at the solstice, when we had that very beautiful new moon solar eclipse in Cancer, and then it was also prominent at the second eclipse that happened after that in Capricorn. So this energy is prevalent throughout this particular 6-month eclipse cycle, and generally speaking, Sirius is really positive energy. This is kind of like the great mother. So this is the kind of the spiritual sun. It's the womb of the cosmos, the world soul. It's this beautiful divine feminine energy kind of coming in. So I do feel as though if there have been difficulties, or if there are during this particular new moon phase when it comes to friends or groups and social media, then I kind of think that it will end up being a healing experience. So it might be a good idea a little bit to pull away from social media for a bit, maybe take a break, and just kind of spend some time in retreat, because I do feel that potentially these 2 weeks could be quite healing for you if you do, because if we look at the outcome of your reading, it's extremely positive, not like last time where you had some quite some fairly difficult energy. You had this sort of this need to transmute difficulties, sadness into happiness, and that's exactly what we see here. So I kind of feel as though you are continuing the work of that last reading, where you are transmuting sadness into happiness. So I'm not going to dwell on that for too much longer. So getting back to your first house. So as I say, the new moon is going to be here with Mercury, and Mercury is all about forward movement. It's about communication. It's about things kind of happening, momentum kind of building, and we do see that in your chart. Actually, we've got Pur as one of your outcome cards, and we've already got it in your 10th house of career. We've also got it in your 6th house of work and health, as well as pets. So I do feel as though there is going to be some momentum for you when it comes to career and work this during this particular new moon phase. So if you, for example, have been waiting for an opportunity or an offer to come in, then I do see progress with that. If you're wanting to start a new job, I also see progress when it comes to that. And if you've had kind of blocks or obstacles that you've had to overcome when it comes to a particular project, or for example somebody that you work with, I do feel as though there is the potential to work through it now. The only downside about Pur, and this is that kind of Mars and Aries energy, is that there can sometimes be a little bit of conflict going on. There can sometimes be a bit of butting of heads when it comes to ego. So if you can just kind of keep that in check and try to stay out of conflict, and just dial things down a little bit, then I feel like things can really move forward for you when it comes to work and career. So the sun and the moon at this particular new moon phase is going to be making a couple of aspects to other planets. So let's kind of get into those next. So the first one is a trine to the nodes, and the nodes are as we said, they're in Gemini and Sagittarius. So For you, those kind of sit in your 11th house and your 5th house. So it's this axis kind of here. So this is where karmic contracts are kind of coming into play. And I think that's why potentially you are seeing Saturn in Capricorn in your 11th house. So there is a sense of, you know, karmic contracts being at work when it comes to friendships and group situations. I feel like there are some soul lessons that are happening kind of, you know, here. And this is what the new moon is indicating by making positive aspects, I might add, to both the north and the south node. So the north node is here in Gemini, and the south node is in Sagittarius, and there is some positive aspects happening between the new moon and those two things. So this is where new soul contracts are coming in, is in your 11th house, and then this is where you are releasing all kind of where things are coming to a completion. Now it's interesting that the 5th house here for you, we've got this very positive Acquisitio, which is Jupiter in Sagittarius, so in fact the very sign that rules your 5th house, and it's repeated here in the outcome of your reading, so, and in your 3rd house. So I think that's a really good sign. I love to see things in threes. For me, it's a great confirmation. So I do feel as though even though new karmic contracts and soul lessons may be coming in when it comes to friendships that might be quite difficult or, you know, seem quite heavy, when it comes to children as well as lovers and creative projects, I do feel as though there's a lot to be gained actually during the next couple of weeks. It looks as though there is the potential here to kind of reap enormous benefits. So you may feel, you know, maybe something happens to one of your children that makes you feel very proud, and you kind of get the sense that, okay, I've done a good job, you know, I haven't done too badly there. If you've been having your doubts, for example. If, for example, you've been thinking about or working on a creative project and not really sure whether it's going to kind of amount to anything in terms of success, I do feel now that there is definitely the potential here for things, you know, potentially to be quite successful, that potentially something that you did out of kind of joy or passion or just for the love of it could potentially end up being financially successful, because Acquisitio is, as I say, that open purse in which kind of gold coins are kind of pouring in. So this is almost that sense of karmic gain from past sort of efforts, which is lovely. I mean, who doesn't want to hear about kind of good karma sort of, you know, coming your way? But I do feel that. So that is something to bear in mind, you know, when it comes to this particular new moon, is that there is definitely the potential here for gains when it comes to you know, past karma, you know, lessons that you've learned. This is the gold essentially of all that alchemical work that you may have been doing, you know, over the last weeks, months or years. That's finally beginning to pay off here. If you're single, of course, this could also potentially be a great new romantic prospect coming in for you. Jupiter in Sagittarius is very, very positive energy. And if you are keen to get away or have a break, this is also the house of holidays. So it could be that you're going on some lovely luxury holiday somewhere in the not too distant future, which is something nice to look forward to. And then the other aspect that we need to bear in mind here is that the Sun will be separating from a difficult aspect to Chiron. Now, Chiron is currently retrograde in Aries, which is here in your 9th house, and usually these two signs, Aries and Leo, would be trine to each other, but because the full moon happens in the late degrees of Leo and Chiron is in the early degrees of Aries, they end up being in negative aspect to each other. So the Sun is separating from a negative aspect to Chiron. Now, it's interesting, we've got Rubeus here again in your 9th house. So it's echoing this energy here of your 4th. So it could be that there's a link between these two things. Maybe it is somehow this drama that I was talking about earlier has to do with a family member that lives at a distance from you, maybe in a different country. It could also be something to do with, you know, a publishing project. It could also be a family member that maybe you're separated from, who lives at a distance. The other areas that it could involve are teaching, publishing, religion and culture, and the law. So maybe there's something to do with like a lawsuit or a legal contract to do with a property here, because last time I did see Via in your 4th house, and it did look as if potentially you were either going to move or you had moved. So it could be that this is something to do with that there's some kind of legal issue to do with this contract of sale of this property, that is now kind of causing a little bit of ructions. So that, I think, is going to key into that solar energy. But do remember that Chiron is retrograde, so we are probably talking about something from the past, and with Chiron there's always the potential for healing. So whatever difficulties may come up in relation to this 9th house at the new moon, I kind of feel as though, number one, it's leaving, because A, Chiron is retrograde, and B, this aspect is separating, this solar aspect. Number two, as I say, Chiron, there's always the potential to turn kind of pain into power. So whatever difficulties you've had, you will learn from, and you can potentially go on to teach others, or kind of, pass on this advice so that others may benefit. So that's the other thing to bear in mind. And then, as I did mention at the beginning, the only kind of vaguely negative energy that is tied up in this particular new moon reading. I don't know why I keep wanting to say full moon. I think it's because it's at the end of the month, and that's normally when full moons are. And of course the solar and the lunar cycles are a little bit out of kilter, which is why we were having full moons at the beginning of the month rather than end. But anyway, so the only negative shadow hanging over this particular new moon is the aftermath of that Mars-Pluto square, which happened in the signs also of Aries and of Capricorn, which for you is 6th house. So this happened on around about the 12th of August, and it does tend to cause like power struggles, quite nasty conflicts, and sometimes having to face difficult or painful truths. So if we connect these two things, we've got Pluto here in the 6th house, which is the house of health and also of work, and then we've got Mars sitting in the 9th house, which is interesting because Rubeus is Mars, Mars in Scorpio. So this is almost that kind of the combination, because Pluto is now the ruler of it's the new ruler, the modern ruler of Scorpio. So really interesting that we've got Mars in Aries here and Mars in Scorpio. They're almost kind of what we would say in mutual reception. So it could be that there's some lawsuit going on to do with an employee, for example, or an employment contract. Maybe you've had to take an employer to court because they haven't paid you what you are owed. Potentially it may have been that there's been some issue to do with like a change of status, for example. So a work environment change, which has had kind of knock-on effects, perhaps on publication deadlines, for example, or on being able to teach in the way that you did before. There's some sort of structural issue here that I kind of feel as though there may have been a bit of drama, and it may have had something to do with this house move, because we do have Rubeus repeated here in your 4th house. So maybe it has to do with the fact that you've now got a home office, and this maybe your new property, you're having problems, for example, with, say, your internet connection, which means that it's difficult for you to talk to clients or bosses that may be at a distance from you. I just feel like there's some structural issue to do with an office, maybe to do with a move that may be kind of causing problems or tensions here. And then the other thing to say, overall, is that this full moon, this new moon, happens in the late degrees of Leo, and anything from 26 degrees onwards, some people say tends to kind of like be what they call a starseed marking. So it is possible that that this has kind of certain implications for those Leos out there who know that they are star seeds. And it's interesting that Mars, I think it's Mars, at the time of this particular new moon, yes, Mars will actually be conjunct Black Moon Lilith, and these two planets will be in the stars of Andromeda. So it's also possible that there's something here about starseed Andromeda, Andromedan kind of clashes with Earth type of expectations. So Andromedians tend to not like restrictions, commitments, anything of that ilk. They don't like it to be tied down. So it's possible that somebody at a distance from you is kind of not wanting to be controlled, or is sort of resisting any kind of contractual obligations or commitments here, and that may be part of the problem. Maybe a boss is sort of like being a little bit evasive, and they're not kind of fulfilling their end of the bargain, or it could be a client that's at a distance from you, for example. But there's something here about wanting to evade obligations that may be relevant. Do let me know in the comments below, you know, whether this has resonated and how it's actually kind of worked out for you. But on the whole, I just want to say though that your outcome is extremely positive. We've got Letitia, which is all about happiness. This is Jupiter in Pisces, so this is about expansive, positive emotions, upbeat, optimistic. We've got Puer, so this is about fresh starts and about feeling that you've got physical vitality and kind of oomph again. And then we've got Acquisitio, which is all about gain, acquisitions, so and material abundance. And it's interesting that you've got it repeated here in your third house. So this for me is about communication. It's also about close relatives and neighbors, people that live within your immediate environment. And it's also about communication and perspective. And cars, that's the other one. So maybe you're kind of in the process of purchasing a new mode of transport, for example, or it could be that there is a short trip away, some kind of holiday, given that Acquisitio is again here in your fifth house, or it could be a message, coming in perhaps from a child, or from a potential new love interest if you are single. But all positive. And also another way that this could work is a message coming in about a creative project. So that looks very favorable. Basically, abundance, gain, success, feel good energy. So all in all, very expansive, quite fiery, and lovely to see sort of very leonine kind of energy, which is, I think, been a little bit kind of subdued, you know, with the intensity of that Lionsgate portal, and with the lunar eclipse that we had in Capricorn. It was a little bit kind of ominous, as you know, it's probably the best way of putting it. Quite intense energy. But I feel like when it comes to the end of this 2-week cycle, you're really going to feel much lighter. You're going to kind of feel as though you've kind of come out of a tunnel, perhaps quite a dark tunnel, and you're back into the light. So just keep your focus very firmly on this positive, upbeat Jupiter and Sagittarius energy. This is lovely, fiery, warm, optimistic energy. So keep your vibe high, and I think before you know it, you'll be moving out of this more challenging energy, this more depressed energy, and into something a lot lighter and happier. So I think lovely, positive reading, Leo. I'm really, really pleased for you. Do let me know how this has worked out for you. If you've enjoyed this reading and it's resonated, feel free to hit the like button. And if you'd like to see future readings, do subscribe to the channel. And if you hit the bell, you'll be notified when I post new readings, so that you never miss out. But wishing you all the best, happy new moon, and I'll catch you again in a couple of weeks.